Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue with our student class and we're going to look at the average function. So in the last video, we discovered that when we call a class, that creates a blank object and that gets passed to the dunder init method as self. And then we can modify that by creating new variables inside that blank object. That's how these things here end up with a name property. And I just said property, and let's start calling things by what they are. When we define a variable inside an object, that's no longer a variable, now it's called a property of the object. Similarly, when we define a function like this average function inside a class, that is no longer called a function, that is now called a method. Same thing, it's just a different name in order for when you talk about programming to be able to quickly differentiate between what you're talking about. So student 1 and student 2 know that they are students. They are of type student, because that's the way that this was created when we called the class. Therefore, because they're of type student, they know that they have this average function inside of them. Now, we can call student1.average. We're calling the average function, which is inside of our student1. Now, you can see that there's a self parameter here, which we are clearly not fulfilling. So, what do you think is going to happen when we print this out? Let's run it. And we get a value, and a valid one at that. So why is that? Well, Python is pretty smart. And when you use an object to call a function of the class, it automatically populates self as the object that called that function. Okay, let me give you another example that you may understand a bit more easily. Let's call the function, the method here in the class. The way that you'd sort of expect to do that is by saying student, which is the class, dot, to access something inside of it, average. Right? We've got the class, we access something inside of it, and what we're accessing is the average function. However, if we do this, and we run it, now we see that it says something not very readable. Average, the average function, is missing one required argument, which is self. So Python obviously cannot tell what object you want to get the average of, because you've not called it with an object, you've called it with the class, which is the definition of an object. So what to do is to pass in a particular object. Oh, not my student, that's a dictionary. Student1. Now, when you call this, student1 will be self,